All right. So good morning. I'm Suzanne Godby-Inglesby, Associate Director of IU's Institute for Advanced Study. I'm very pleased that you are all here with us. And it is my pleasure to introduce Kim Geeslin, who is one of the Associate Vice Provosts for Faculty and Academic Affairs. And Kim and I have been working together on this program for a few years now. And so she has put together this series of workshops, and we have really, I think over the years, kind of refined and honed the presentations. So we're going to start today with presentations about the topic of looking at the criteria for promotion. So I will turn this over to Kim now. I'll ask that while the presentation is happening, let's all go ahead, and I see everybody's muted. That's great. Let's go ahead and turn off our videos as well during that time. And then when we get to the Q&A portion, we will turn those back on. So Kim, thank you very much. I will turn this over to you now.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. Suzanne, give me a thumbs up if you see a screen that has the title page. Okay, wonderful.
Yes, you're set.
Fantastic. So as Suzanne said, I am one of the Associate Vice Provosts for Faculty and Academic Affairs. And our office is set up to ensure that you can always get information, have a confidential conversation with someone who will have no decision-making role down the road. And presently, I work with associate professors and other groups as well. But please feel free to contact me either following the workshop or years from now if you come up with a question. We can always make sure that you can get individualized advice. Today we're talking about benchmarks and goals, and the overarching thread here is that you are starting to plan your path. So this is a longer view of what should happen over the course of the next several years. And our thinking was that it becomes much easier to think about benchmarks if you're a good ways out and have time to actually plan and implement those steps. So one thing I'd like to do today, hopefully, is demystify the process a little bit. So you might hear us say in our workshops that this is a multi-level review, and it's really important to understand that that's the case. It means that as your dossier moves from one review level to the next, every level looks with independent eyes, fresh eyes at your dossier and reviews it not as if they were part of the previous level, but independently. So this is nice because what you can know is that people who understand criteria, understand the benchmarks, are looking at your dossier in multiple levels of review. So the path of a dossier, it starts in the unit. And I will say unit because some of you are in programs or departments or even in schools that don't have either one of those things. So the unit might be your department if you are in some schools. And generally there's a subcommittee report. So that's the smallest level of review. There's maybe a team of 3 people who look at your dossier. They write a report and they present it to the vote eligible faculty. And then there's a vote. That's the first vote that's recorded. Then the dossier moves on to the unit chair if you have units, and the chair will write a letter and register their own vote. And then this goes on to the school committee. So if you're in a school that doesn't have departments, that's the starting point. You'll have a school committee, you'll have eligible voters, and then it goes to the dean, and the dean takes a fresh look. Then it goes to a campus committee, and the campus committee will also discuss the case, write a report, and vote on your case. And from there, it goes into executive level review. And you won't get independent votes from the vice provost for faculty and academic affairs, the provost or the president, but you'll find out the outcome at the end of that stage. So together that constitutes the executive level review. The point being there are lots of protections. There are lots of people who understand criteria and process, and this is a safeguard for fairness and procedural regulations. There are 4 avenues to promotion. The one you hear about most is excellence in research. If you choose, or creative activity, if you choose to present a case based on excellence in research, you'll need to also be at least effective or satisfactory in teaching and service. There are also 2 other combinations based on excellence in one area and then meeting the minimum criteria in the other 2. So you can present a case based on excellence in teaching, and then you must be at least satisfactory in research and satisfactory in service. You may present a case based on excellence in service, and then you must be satisfactory, effective in research and teaching. Or you can present a balanced case. And one of the developments in recent years, it happened, I believe, in 2020 officially. So we've had a couple rounds of using the new criteria. The requirement for a balanced case is that you establish that you are very good in all three areas. So this can be seen as an evaluation scale. There's satisfactory and then very good and then excellent in each of these three areas. So you'll demonstrate independently in each of those three areas that you've reached the bar for very good. And one of the improvements recently in the criteria at the campus level, and this has led to good revisions in the schools and in the departments over time, is that there are better definitions for very good now. It's much clearer. Another important development is that by establishing clearer definitions of satisfactory, for example, in service, one needn't feel like they have to be very good or excellent in service if that's not their area of excellence for the case they present. I have pulled a few quotes from criteria at various levels just to help situate some of the discussion of benchmarks and criteria. So this comes from the campus level documents. It clearly states that there are 4 paths. These 4 paths are available to everyone at IUB. So if you encounter a department that doesn't generally present a balanced case, or that hasn't seen typically cases of excellence in teaching, and you need some help communicating this with them, we're happy to have conversations with you to show you how to develop those cases and what the criteria require for each of those different avenues. The criteria also say you must be excellent in one performance area and then satisfactory, effective in the other, or that in some cases you may present a balanced case. One note about the balanced case: this works really well if all of your areas of activity mutually enhance the other. So there are some cases where one's research has a great outward facing component where it's also a service to translate that research into practical outcomes, and teaching may be integrated in the sense that students are trained and then go out into the field and also have a similar impact. It's not an easier avenue, and that's important to understand, because very good is a relatively high bar. So when you're considering whether or not the balanced case is right for you, it's a great starting point to read the description of each of these levels of achievement in each of the 3 areas and see which option gives you the best opportunity to present your strengths. This is a screenshot of our website. I just want to make sure that you know, and it's VPFAA at indiana.edu. If you just search VPFAA IUB, this is also what comes up. And you'll find these tabs under faculty resources and then tenure and promotion. And then there's buttons that take you to various documents. You'll find guidelines, you'll find policies, and this bottom left link will take you straight to the school and department policies. The eDossier button has a list of the folders that are available in eDossier, and it also has a video tour that we recorded last year. So you're welcome to explore that. This, for associate professors going up to full, if changes are implemented through the BFC and the criteria change, you will also have to work with the new criteria. That's different from tenure. So I make a point to make that distinction. So it's a good idea to check here periodically and make sure you're familiar with each of these documents. So the question we get quite often is, when is it time to go up for promotion? How do I know if I'm ready? And we hear a lot of cautionary tales about waiting too long or waiting for someone else to say, hey, I think it's time. And our hope is that by looking at the criteria and understanding the process, you have better information from which you can make that decision. So this is just a repetition of what I showed you on the previous page, how to find the faculty resources and tenure promotion. You'll also find your school criteria linked from our web page. One note: if you click on the College of Arts and Sciences, it does not take you to the school criteria. It takes you to an alphabetized list of all of the units in the school. And then if you want to look at the college criteria, down at the bottom of their webpage, you'll see faculty and staff intranet. And if you click, it's password protected, it will take you to their policy documents, and you'll find that pretty easily. And for your own department, and sometimes we need a little time to track these down. They are, for the College of Arts and Sciences, they're linked from the VPFAA website, but they may have been recently revised. It's a great idea to check in with your chair about that and make sure that you stay up to speed on any changes that are implemented over time while you're in rank. So in deciding whether or not it's time to go up for promotion, step one is to find these criteria and read each of those documents carefully. First, to consider which kind of case you'd like to present, and then to outline what it would mean, for example, to have a national reputation or to establish impact in service beyond your home unit. When you start to translate the criteria into your own activities, that's when you can have a measure of what work remains and how to showcase your efforts thus far. The second step is in reading them to determine whether or not you've met those established standards. And what you'll find is that the policies are not contradictory, but they're generally increasingly specific. So I've pulled examples from the College of Arts and Sciences and from art history. And you can see that in the College of Arts and Sciences, it says a candidate must have achieved or be clearly developing a position of national, international leadership in a substantial field. So national leadership, international leadership in a substantial field is fairly broad, and that's intentional. It encompasses creative activity, it encompasses various types of research and even book and article fields. So you won't find, for example, that there's a requirement that says you need 7 articles or you must have a book. At the college level, it's about reputation, and reputation can be developed both through publishing in particular venues, through being reviewed in a variety of ways that show impact in your field. So we can talk a little bit about that as well. And we'll get much deeper into those details in one of our spring workshops. If you look then at art history, they have good governance documents. So I didn't pull this out for any individual in the group, but just because I like the way these nested criteria line up. They have some specific language. Successful candidates will have produced high quality, nationally recognized publications as part of their research mission that is fundamental to the Department of History of Art and to Indiana University as a whole. And they specifically ask for work that is equivalent to a peer-reviewed book-length study. So if not a book, then it may be some other equivalent work, and it may be distributed in digital form. They value hypothesis-driven work. So you see the level of detail here is appropriate for within a department, and still there's some flexibility. So they don't say you must have a book. They say it must be equivalent to that sum of work. So when you look at your own criteria, what you'll want to do is map this general language onto your own work and see what that might mean for your own productivity and impact. Knowing the internal timeline. So the idea here is that it's important to understand which activities take place in your home unit, because these can precede the start of the official review cycle. So for example, your unit might have a spring review, or it might even start in the fall, and you'll want to know which materials are required for that. They are generally also things that will go in your promotion dossier, but it's usually a subset. So it's helpful to know what kinds of materials you should be collecting and when those will be due to your unit. And sometimes there is a date in the independent units to notify your chair, either that you'd like to go up for that enhanced review, that you'd like to be considered for promotion, because the chair will then need to start to assemble all of the mechanisms that are needed. For example, a subcommittee to review your work, either as part of that pre-promotion review or at the inception of the promotion review. And the official start of the review process for everyone, regardless of your unit practices, is to contact external reviewers and then to ultimately send the materials. So in the spring semester, before you submit your dossier, You will be asked to submit a list of external readers, and your department will also submit that list. The dean ultimately has the authority to decide which reviewers to select from each of those lists, but it's a great idea to be thinking about who you'd like to suggest well in advance, maybe years in advance as you go to different conferences and see people presenting work that's compatible with yours, or people who have really insightful questions at your presentations. Those are great people to just to have in mind as you move through your rank. And then usually in May, you'll be asked to have a packet ready to send out to the external reviewers. And those packets vary from unit to unit. In some units, say, for example, you're going up for excellence in research, you might be asked to include all of your published works. In others, it's just a sample. Almost always there's a cover statement and a CV and some sample of your work in the area that you'd like to demonstrate excellence. But those do vary from one unit to another. And if you're presenting a case that's atypical for your unit, if you're presenting a balance case, or you're presenting excellence in service or teaching, and that hasn't happened in a while, it's a great idea to start that conversation in advance and talk about the best ways to showcase your work, so that you're not under time pressure pulling that together sooner than you anticipated. So I'll leave you with a few thoughts about planning your dossier. And again, this is long-term planning, but it's helpful to have this in mind as you think about what you might do over the next few years. There's a quote at the bottom: an effective dossier will provide multiple independent measures collectively indicating sustained contributions and demonstrating impact of appropriate depth and breadth. And that sounds like a mouthful, but the idea is generally that you'd like to showcase your accomplishments and rank. And the dossier is set up to allow a lot of flexibility in what's included, what's appropriate for your discipline. But you'll want to think about how would you best demonstrate the accomplishments that you've had, the impact that you've had. You'll want to think about how to connect this to the criteria. And this is where planning and knowing your criteria can be very helpful. You want to demonstrate impact on your field, in your unit, on your campus, and impact can be measured in a variety of ways. In general, my advice, regardless of your field, is that even if there is a singular metric that seems to be the gold standard, that should not be the only way you demonstrate impact. So think about all of the other ways that you might show that your work is positively affecting your community, your field, your students. We can brainstorm about that. Also, we'll talk about it in a later workshop. And the idea is to tell the story of your trajectory since tenure. So there's a focus on work and rank. That work obviously begins with the foundation of the work that you did prior to tenure. So that's usually the starting point. But then it's what have you done since that time? It may be that you just continued on a great path without much change, but it's likely for many of you that this will look really different from your pre-tenure time in rank. And so you can start to think about how to tell that story, how you made new connections, how you worked across disciplines, how you learned new skills in order to reach a different audience or produce a different product. So those are the kinds of planning questions that are a lot more fun if you start several years out instead of in the moment when you are hoping to submit your dossier. So I will go ahead and end here.